Thanks very much, Tom, for these kind words. Wow, what an act to follow. Gosh, I wish I had been on first thing in the morning. On call. Sorry, I should just start. It's wonderful to see so many peers and actually be able to have conversations with some of you today. And I know that some of you are on this journey or some of you are thinking about this journey. So hopefully what I cover today will help you make a decision. So just a bit about me. I've been at Skyscanner now for approaching 12 years. Next week will be my 12th anniversary at Skyscanner. So a wonderful place to work, but enough of me and on to the story. So I think we've heard a lot about how stale, how stagnant the tools have become that we've used over the years. And the expectations of the people using these tools, we just haven't, the suppliers just haven't kept up to date. So I guess, what were the problems? Our engineers using the tool, they wanted a slick user interface. They wanted things just to work. Our managers also want to understand the service, the health of their services and their teams as well. But why do we have to go around stitching data, running our own pipelines, pulling in information from different places when we should just have it all in one place? And also our HR teams. For Skyscanner, we compensate our engineers for the time that they spend on call. So, we've got budgets to balance, but we also have to care about the health and welfare of our teams, making sure that individuals are not working too many hours on call, out of hours on call. Getting insight in any of these things was horrendously difficult. We ended up running our own data pipelines, our own services to fill the gaps that were in the products that we were trying to use. And ultimately the controls. Is everybody got their policy set up properly for being paged? Are they going to be able to respond? You didn't know the answers to any of these questions. So you can imagine the excitement when the internet took off back in March 24, LinkedIn, bing, 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 on-call was taken off from Incident.io. And that was a real moment of excitement, because in my head, I'd already left our previous provider. I was just looking for a new solution. But much like that hangover that you have the day after, when we looked at, say, on-call version 1, we realized it wasn't going to work for us. I guess to understand why, you probably need to understand a little bit about Skyscanner first. So our mission is quite simple. We just want to be the #1 travel ally. We're already inspiring 140 million users a month. So, we're reasonably large. We're helping people find destinations to travel to. We're helping them find the ways to get there and the places to stay once they get there. So in terms of scale, there's it's 160 now actually. So, but globally, we're available globally. We're in 37 languages. We have to manage all that, in 52 managed markets. And the number I keep having to double check is that 100 billion price searches take place on our platform every day. That's big numbers. And thanks to SLOs, I think we might hear about SLOs later on, we know that we're getting 94% of these returned in under 3 seconds. So what sits behind that? We have thousands of components, data sets, models, all distributed in the cloud. Over the years, we've amassed 22 petabytes of business data, and every month our engineers delight us with an extra 800 terabits of observability data. And that's all supported by approaching 900 engineers now. Every day, during the working day, there's 120 schedules running. And out of hours, so in the evenings and at the weekends, there's another 60 teams who are operating an out of hours schedule. So every month, that's approximately 350 engineers and accumulating over 30,000 hours of out of hours on call that we compensate them for. And just touching on that, we know there are different compensation models available, but for the purpose, I'm not going to touch on them today. Just enough to know that we compensate for the disruption to life of being on call. We don't pay you extra for dealing with calls, but it's a flat hourly rate regardless of what level you're on. And really, we want our engineers to run stable systems. We don't want them to be called out. We want stability in the platform. If you do want to know about other models that are available, check out blogs from other people. So back to on-call. What was missing from on-call for us? Ultimately, it came down to the payment calculator. Now, the technology, what you monitor and how you monitor, that's a well-trodden path. That was all sorted. And having a catalogue in the product, we've heard enough. We know that the catalogue is there and it can be used in various ways. But we also benefited here from having a relationship with our own IDP provider. So we could integrate directly into Incident.io through that. The part that was missing really was the organisation, how you define your organisation, the who's, the where's, the when, the how much, and then the controls around that. So what do we do about it? Remember, we're still on the downwards. Our mood is still down. We've gone through the euphoria of the announcement and realised it wasn't going to work for us. So we sat down with some friends at Incident.io and we told them, it's not us, it's you. But as I mentioned earlier, in my head, my relationship with my previous supplier had gone. I wanted this relationship to work. So we documented the requirements, we sat down with the team, and we got to a stage where we felt comfortable that we could go with this. We had some tricky points in here. There was really difficult termination points and contracts to be dealt with. We managed to get through that. And importantly, we needed somebody to mastermind this as well. So Megan rushed back from maternity leave to help mastermind the build of what I'm going to talk about. So we collected these requirements and we all agreed on a joint path forward. Keep in mind, we've got the termination contract calls thing in the back of our head as well. And then from January, in November and December, we went through that feasibility discussion and we sorted out the commercials. Then from January through into April, Incident.io spent more time with us, fleshing out on these requirements, understanding our business and our processes in more detail. Just because we had requirements down didn't mean we were right. You needed someone else to validate that and to think of other ways of solving the problems. So we agreed these requirements and we just gave Incident.io space to build. We knew from the previous experience of going through Response and the other products there that the team would build and would commit. Our challenge was actually we're building far too fast and we couldn't keep up with them. And then there was a few refinements and the decision points to be made. So by the end of April, we'd decided we're going to go for this. Now, I mentioned there about understanding our business. It's probably no secret, we have quite a large team of engineers out in China. Their experience is quite different of these on-call products than our own. The Great Firewall does get in the way, so that causes some real challenges there. So we spent time working out what to do there. Ultimately, what we needed was our organisation in a catalogue. I've mentioned obviously that we've got the IDP provider there, so that was a great help. And we're linking up data, so let's have a look at this in more detail. The who, so almost 900 engineers now. That's pretty straightforward to get into a catalogue. And the definitions of your teams and your schedules, Well, your teams, the best thing to do is to take that from Workday or whatever other tool you have for managing your organization. But the important thing is it's real data. It's not a synthetic copy that you're updating yourself in your own catalogue. And then also to tie in the location of each engineer, which will become apparent in a second why that's important. So the where. We're working across 3 currencies, 3 different time zones, and within our different offices, there are different work patterns that people will follow. So our colleagues in China, they tend to start at 10 o'clock and work later on to the day, whereas here in the UK, we tend to be like 9 to 5 when it comes to daytime running. But if you've got an organisation that's maybe in the States operating at the West Coast, your engineers might be starting really early in the morning so they can confer with people over here in Europe. So being able to set the different office hours was something that we needed. And then national holidays, they change all over the world. So how do we track holidays and international holidays into the payment calculator as well? And eventually it's a question of how much. We needed to be able to export this data, process it, use some rules and governance around the processing of that data so that we could then export that direct to our payroll systems. A couple of things in there. It's not uncommon for engineers to occasionally appear on 2 rotas. We don't want them getting paid twice for that. And also we have to be sure that we're exporting in local currencies as well. There's a whole pile of other things that you need to think about as well, depending on the countries that you're operating. But ultimately, we needed to be sure that we had good governance around this, and also to get the insights. I started at the beginning talking about the data that we just couldn't get out. We want to have that data coming straight here from the source of truth. So what did we get to? We got our payment calculator version 2. Yeah, this slide's probably a bit messy now that I think about it. But what did that give us? So secure config around the approved schedules that we have there. Secure config around our location data, so that nobody could go in and make changes that weren't approved in there as well. And our compensation config, all tied down using the RBAC capabilities within the product. But, sorry, just to come back to this one, although we had really solid controls around this, we didn't want to lock down the platform for the rest of engineering, because they needed to be able to change their rotas and their schedules, depending on their own use. So we left them free. Now, we got to the big question, TTM. So many of you involved in incident management here, you're wondering, is this another acronym that we need to worry about? Well, only if you're doing a migration. So we knew we had a good product, and we knew we had a good team that could fix any surprises that would come up. But what about the migration? Incident.io had already said to us, it's okay, we can cut this short. We can do a lift and shift of your existing config. But we didn't feel comfortable with that for some of the reasons that we have up here. 10 years of legacy. There was a lot in there that we just didn't want. So we decided to spend the time up front, start afresh. So, because we knew that if we didn't do that, we would end up at the end of that journey fixing problems, and fixing problems. So we went fresh with a greenfield solution. Down to the migration. So in April, our own squad went live using the tool. And we also went back to some representatives from our teams in China as well, just to make sure they were comfortable with the work that was taking place. And we learned and we iterated and we improved on our migration plan. Then we made that rollout decision point by the end of April. And in May, we started onboarding a number of friendly squads. I'm saying friendly here. They were people who we knew would be opinionated and we knew they were busy. And that runs into June. By the end of June, we've got 7 teams all using Incident.io on call in anger. And then the big push, we used all the learnings from April and June. And June, July into August, we pushed hard on that migration. We sat down initially with squads and with tribes, just talking them through what the experience was going to be like. And we've done a whole pile of preparation behind the scenes as well. So you get to a stage where hopefully they just need to accept some PRs. And yep, by the end of August, all done, complete. And I'm actually delighted to say that today is the termination day on the contract that we had with our previous vendor. So we had some margin in here and we managed it. But the story doesn't stop there. Let's come back to why we wanted on call. So we've got multiple observability tools, probably like many of you. It'd be great if you could rely on one, but reality is quite different. These alerts that are being generated by our observability platform, as soon as they arrive in Incident.io, that's you inside their ecosystem. The catalog, the tagging, and all the process, all that meta that's there to help you. But thinking back to the presentation you've just seen, we generate a triage incident. By the time the engineers got online, AISRE has already done a first pass. So they're not landing cold into an incident, they're landing there with some background on the incident itself. And I'm delighted to say, Skyscanner does have access to products ahead of the market. So we've been able to see the value in this already. We can then go from our triage, and if it's a bad enough issue, you will generate an incident. Then you've gone through the post-incident flow, where you learn, you share, you grow, and build a better future. And you want to make sure that your follow-up actions are actually being dealt with and they're not sitting going stale. So again, they're in Incident.io, they could be followed up. And underneath all that is all the insights. The insights all the way from alerts right through to your follow-up actions and everything else in between. So if I think about coming back to alerts and turning into incidents, in the month of September, I had a look back at our data. September, the number of incidents in Skyscanner doubled. I thought, oh, wow, that was a really bad month. But using the insights, digging into the data, it was quite apparent that we hadn't actually had any more incidents. We just recorded more incidents. These alerts going into triage weren't just being forgotten about, they were being turned into incidents when it mattered. So we've now got more information on the incidents and the toil and the drag than we had before. So if you are doing this kind of thing, expect to see an increase in your incidents, but don't be shocked, don't be surprised, just be glad. And as a little bonus, sneaking out from under the carpet was the new Teams feature, not to be confused with the other teams. So this is a simple dashboard view that gives engineers access within a team or in a squad to the stuff that matters to them, their live incidents, their alerts, their escalations, their schedules if they need to make any quick changes. And then all the post-incident activities can be seen there as well, so that people don't forget about these things and they end up just being completely forgotten about. So what were the lessons that we took from this? Be clear as you can with your requirements up front, obviously, but be willing to accept that your supplier may have other ideas that can help. Make sure you liaise early with payroll people. In this case, we were not changing our compensation model. We didn't want to do that. This was a technical exercise, but we still have to interface with our payroll systems and our HR systems. When it comes to the actual implementation, seek out champions in your teams or your squads. These people will deal with all the issues locally without you having to be a point of escalation. And I would recommend these are not like engineering managers with team leads, but have other champions who are closer to the day-to-day life of being an engineer. And pay special attention to other geographies and regulations in other places. And if you are working across these regions, just watch out for any rules that come into place or any situations like a firewall. And yes, speak to incident. They will build it. That's been my experience for years. We've heard already that every week there's something coming out in the change log. It is really hard to keep up with, but yeah, they will build it if you want it. And finally, we were customer 0 here for On-Call version 2. And that journey started in November, December, and went right through to August. But that was us working with Incident.io and building a product that you will now be able to benefit from. So you're not going to have to worry about a 6-month migration. You will be able to do this faster.